Hilchos Tumas Tzaraas Perek Chamisha Asar, the laws of impurity imparted by Tzaraas, chapter 15. After learning yesterday about all the conditions that are required to make a home eligible for getting lesions of Tzaraas, now let's go through the actual process. What happens if a lesion appears in your home? What do you do? How do you determine if it's pure or impure? It says that Rambam right out of the gate, Halacha Aleph, Nigei Batim, lesions that appear in homes, Yesh Bahem Hesger Shleisha Shavuos. They have potential to be in quarantine for 3 weeks. So unlike skin and clothing, which have a maximum of quarantine for 2 weeks, and after that they're just declared either pure or impure, with homes it can go on for a 3rd week. And remember, says the Rambam, that in the context of these laws, weeks aren't full 7 days, because the 7th day of each week counts as the last day of the first and the beginning of the second. So really 3 weeks is not 21 days, it's Shehem Tisha Asar Yom, they're 19 days in total. Sheyem Shvi Elo Lekano Lekan, because day 7 counts for the 1st week and for the 2nd week. The Yem Shleisha Asar Elo Lekano Lekan, and day 13, which is the 7th day if you include day 7, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, also counts as the end of the 2nd week and the beginning of the 3rd week. Which means that when we talk about weeks in this context, if the home in question requires a quarantine of 3 weeks, so that means the Kohen's going to be inspecting it on day 7, day 13, and day 19. Now, the Hesger Batim, Shleisha Shavuos, Einam Mefurish B'Torah. You should know, says the Rambam, that the idea that homes Tzaraas could be quarantined for 3 weeks is not clear in the Torah. Listen to this. A majority of the laws of Tzaraas of homes, Divrei Kabbalah Hein, are interpretations received by tradition from the verses. There are plenty of verses in the Torah about Tzaraas of homes, but very ambiguous and very unclear. So for most of the actual practical laws, we require the oral tradition to tell us how to explain the verses. And the Rambam, as a code of law, just gives us the bottom line. All the laws in sum total that we know that are clear in the verses, and that as we incorporate that which we receive from tradition, it goes like this. So, pay close attention, because there's a lot of details. Let us say the Kohen comes to a home to check the lesion, and he sees that indeed the lesion looks sunken, which is one of the conditions, and it's deep green or deep red, Commissioner Brown was explaining yesterday. Yasgir Shivas Yamim. So the first thing is, you put it into quarantine for 7 days. Even if the entire home turned green or red, Yasgir. First thing, you put the home into quarantine. And by the way, in this way, it's different than the other Tzaraas, is that if in a human Tzaraas, if it goes to the entire body, it's pure. Here, it's actually a reason or a potential for impurity, you put it into quarantine. And now on day 7, after week 1 is over, you check the lesion. If it got lighter, or, needless to say, if it totally disappeared, easy solution. The Kohen peels off the area where the lesion used to be, or still is in its lighter form, and the home is pure. That's it. That's a case of after 1 week, you're done with it. If you found that the lesion stayed the same color, it didn't get lighter, but it also didn't spread, masgir shavua sheni, you put it into quarantine for a 2nd week. Now, what happens if it does spread? That we're going to get the laws later on in this halacha. First, the Rambam is going to go through all the scenarios of a case where after week 1 it didn't spread, because this is the case where it can go to a maximum of 3 weeks, and then we'll come back to see what happens if it spread after week 1. So here we are again, after week 1, it just stayed the same. It says that Rambam put it into a 2nd week of quarantine. On day 13, you check it out. If it got lighter or went away, so the same as week 1, you simply peel it off. However, we don't just declare the home to be pure, rather, you have to go through the purification process through the birds, which we're going to explain what that is in a moment. If, however, the lesion spread at the end of week 2, now remember, we still haven't said what happens if you spread at the end of week 1. We're getting to that. Now we're already after week 2. If it got lighter, peel it off, purify with birds. If it spread, or it stayed the same, here it makes no difference. In the end of week 1, staying the same puts you into a 2nd week of quarantine. Spreading has a different law. At the end of week 2, spreading and staying the same is the same. And what is the law of that? You must first of all remove the stones upon which the lesion developed, take them out of the wall. You also have to peel off the mortar, the dirt that's around those stones. Take those stones and dirt outside the city. And you must recoat the entire home with some dirt, with some clay. You put it into a third week of quarantine. These 3 steps are called choletz v'koitze v'tach. We have them again and again in these laws. You remove the stones, you peel the mortar, and you recoat the home. And then you put it into a third week of quarantine. Okay? And we're still going with the scenario. We'll be on Tisha Asar. On day 19, you check it out. Im chazar boy. This is called acharei hitoyach. We had this concept yesterday in short. After it's been recoated, if a lesion reappears, nega kishne grisin, the size of the original lesion, 2 grisin, harez a pisya in acharei hitoyach. This is called a spreading. After the home has been recoated, the noiset, that's called habayis, and unfortunately you must destroy the entire home. If after week 3 it didn't return, you have to purify it with the birds. But do it as soon as possible, because anytime the lesion comes back before purifying it with birds, it has to be destroyed. Whereas if it were to return after you did the purification process with the birds, it will be treated as a new lesion, and you have much more chance to have your home escape unscathed. That's the maximum as it plays out. In the scenario where after week 1 it didn't spread, therefore it caused you to put you into a second week of quarantine and then potentially a third week of quarantine. Now that Rambam returns, let's go back. Similarly, if the lesion had spread at the end of week 1, so the same way in the last scenario, after week 2 if it spreads, we do choletz v'koitze v'tach, remove the stones, peel the dirt, and recoat the home. That would actually also be done at the end of week 1 if it had spread. You take out the stones, you peel the dirt away, take it outside the city, and recoat the home. You put it into quarantine for a second week. And then you check it out. And it's the same as the last case. If you find a lesion that has come back, the size of the original lesion, 2 grisin, that's called spreading after the coating. And you destroy the whole home. If no lesion came back, you purify it with birds. And again, do it as soon as possible. If the lesion reappears before the purification process happens, it must be destroyed. Whereas, if a lesion had appeared after the birds were to be done with the purification, will be treated like a new nega. And so, if you followed all the cases, we actually have 10 different cases as the weeks go on, as the Rambam summarizes it in his commentary to the Mishnah. I encourage you to look there to see the beautiful summary. Halacha Gimel. When you have to remove the stones, when the process demands that you remove the stones from the wall where the lesion developed, you don't take out less than 2 stones. You must take out 2 stones minimum. And when you take out those stones, you cannot take stones now from elsewhere in the home to replace the stones that you just removed. Because it says, you must take other stones and replace the stones which you just removed, not ones that are already in the home. Same when you remove the dirt around the stones. You can't take replacement dirt from somewhere else in the home. Because it says, other dirt you must take and coat the home. And that word afar is specific. You cannot coat the home with lime. It has to be dirt. Because it says, you take other dirt, and that's what you use to coat the home. Additionally, when you remove the 2 stones minimum, you cannot replace them with 1. Nor can you replace one of the 2 which you removed with 2. You must bring 2 in place of the 2 which you removed. If you removed 3 stones, you can bring 2 stones to replace them. That's fine, as long as you bring back a minimum of 2 stones. Let's say the home, the wall upon which the lesion appeared, is a shared wall between 2 homes. Both of them must be involved in the bother that goes into removing the stones, removing the dirt, Ushnein mivian avanim acheres, have to both pay or provide for the new stones that are being brought as replacement. Aval bal habayis levadai mevi asa offer. But the dirt for the recoating, that's only have to be provided by the owner of the actual home, which is suffering from the lesion. Remember, because it says, in all the other cases it says in the plural, v'lakchu, they should take, and then it says, v'ofar acher yikach, he must take other dirt, v'tach es habayis, to coat the home. That means, ein chaverei mitapalim beticha, the friend, in the case where there is a friend, doesn't have to take care of the coating together with him. Halacha hey, even shebezavis, if you have a big stone that's in the corner of the wall of a home, and it serves again two homes, his home and the other home. Bisman she'u chaylitz, if the process demands that you remove the stone, chaylitz es kula, you remove it all. And your friend also has to suffer, so to speak, because part of his stone is going to be removed. Bisman she'u noiseitz, but if the process demands that you destroy the home, noiseitz es shala, you maniach es shal chaverei. In that scenario, the cornerstone, you only have to destroy your part, and you can leave your friend's part. There's a bit of a doubt though, if we should consider the part of the stone that's in your friend's home somewhat of a handle or servient to your stone. But out of doubt, we leave it as it is and we let his stone stay. Let's say you have a first story, there's a lesion in the first story, but there's a second story built on top of it. No lesions in there. So we allow the roof beams to be considered the floor of the second story, and therefore, if you have to destroy the bottom story, the roof doesn't have to go. On the other hand, if a lesion appears in the second story, you can say, you know what, the beams are part of the first story, and they don't have to be destroyed. If there's no second story, you can't get away with saying, oh, the roof beams belong to someone else. Avanav, the eitzav, the afare, kulan nitatzin nimai. All the stones, all the wood, all the dirt has to be destroyed, except umatzilas hamalbinin ve'asrige achalenis. You could save the wooden frames that are used for a fence of sorts on the roof, and also if there's any netting, lattice work in the windows, you can save those. Those aren't called part of the structure of the house. But the whole roof has got to go. Halacha zayin alekeach avanim mibayis musgar. Let's say you have a home that's in quarantine. It's pending the status of whether it has tzaraas or not. Meanwhile, somebody goes and takes stones from that home, ubana oisan bebayis tar, builds them into a pure home. You got to keep track. Chazar hanegel musgar, if the lesion reappears to the home that's been quarantined, you have to also remove the stones that are sitting in the pure home. They have the same laws as the impure home. If the lesion reappears on those stones which you removed from the quarantined home, that will cause the home that's been quarantined to have to be destroyed, because it's still part of that home. The habayis hasheni, and the second home, which now has this stone built into it that has a new lesion there, we just simply put it into quarantine with this lesion, like any home which has a new lesion. In other words, with regards to the old home, it's making it worse, putting it to be destroyed. With regards to the new home, it's a new nega. Halacha ches. We mentioned before that sometimes you have to purify a home with birds. How do we go about that? What does it mean you purify a home after removing the stones and recoating the home? You bring live water from a freshwater stream, in a pottery utensil, two birds, and a piece of cedar wood, and hyssop, and the red wool string, with the exact same process as used for the human. The whole thing. You slaughter it, you bury the bird, and you put the other bird, you dip it in the water, you send it away, that whole thing. And that's the way, and then you sprinkle it on the home. With the person, where do you sprinkle the water that you dip the bird in and all the stuff? You sprinkle it 7 times in the back of the Mitzvah's hand. If it's a home, you must sprinkle the 7 times on the outside of the lintel of the home. But all the other actions, the entire procedure of purifying a person is exactly equal to how you purify a home.